Hey, everybody, welcome back to a new episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. On this episode, I've got a very, very special guest and probably one of the most talented artists that you are going to see, period, in the automotive world. Abimelec, how are you doing, man?
Thanks, man. That was a great introduction. I really appreciate that. I'm doing really well. Thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Dude, I have been wanting to get you on this show for a long time, and I'm so glad we finally got to make it happen. Now, for those of you out there, when it comes to digital art, digital renderings, especially in the automotive world, man, you have just taken Instagram by storm with your concepts, your mashups, your what ifs, your, just your entire design acumen. How did you get started in doing automotive design and automotive digital creation?
Oh, well, thanks again, dude. But yeah, it all started basically when I got my first PC. I think I was like 9 years old. I was a little kid, and I discovered this software called Photoshop, right? So I started playing around with it, and I've always liked cars. I've always been like drawing cars and all that. But I started playing with it with car photos and like developing ideas within the software. And then it just snowballed to what you see now. I remember one of the pivotal points, I guess you could say, was that I started sharing my stuff, my work with people on like Facebook groups and all that. I have a lot of friends that I got to know there from like around the world.
Yeah.
And they were like, you should share this stuff on your own page. You should make it more public. And it just snowballed from there.
When you first started doing these things, so let me ask you this. So the concepts that you're posting up now on Instagram and on Facebook and whatnot, is that all Photoshop? Or do you have...
So it evolved from like just Photoshop. If you look up my older work, you can see that there on Instagram. It's like all Photoshop. But it got to a point where a lot of people doing the same thing moved to 3D. So it was like a kind of like the standard of the industry, just moving towards that because it allows you a little bit more freedom, exploring ideas and just showcasing it. So it got to a point where I had to just do it and move to that. And I had to learn the software and all that.
So are you self-taught or did you go to school for this?
No, I went for school. I went to school for marketing, but it's all self-taught. Yeah.
Really? My God. It's really interesting because we met probably, I don't know, it's got to be 3-4 years ago, 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, about that. I think 2018, 17, something like that.
Yeah. And you had done a rendering of my my Daytona and of my Wagoneer.
Yeah,
and
it was
And it was they blew me away. Since then,
thanks, man.
You seem to come out with a rendering almost weekly.
Yeah, I try to keep it constant because that's kind of like Instagram favors you if you do that. So it keeps the page fresh and people coming in.
So where do you? All right, I got so many questions because like I can't draw a stick figure, and you're coming out with these 3D models and these 3D renderings of vehicles that obviously are not stock.
Yeah.
But what they do is they have the capacity to take your automotive imagination to a place where you never thought it could go. Now, I've been doing this a long time. Yeah. I've been entrenched in the automotive world for a long time. I've seen custom cars, obviously SEMA, and all over the place in California. We see them all the time of everything from race cars to lowriders to 4x4s to everything in between, right?
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, you show up and turn everything on its ear, at least for guys like me. And I constantly look at your stuff and I always wonder where the designs come up. So I'm gonna pull a car up here. And for those of you listening at home, if you get a chance, watch the YouTube version of the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast of this episode, because we've got a couple of visuals that you should look at. And so what I'm going to pull up, and this is one you did a while ago. This is a 1961 Chrysler Newport.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it looks... And now, for anybody that knows, the 1961 Chrysler Newport is a cool car in its own right.
Yeah, very cool.
But it got so much better when you did it. But how do you, and what's really interesting, first of all, let me just say, what is your Instagram page for everybody out there?
It's at Abimelec Design. It's just my name with design on the end of it. I try to keep it like a simple thing, but it's my name, which is not simple at all. But yeah, it's that.
Okay. So people, you need to go there. Facebook, we're going to give you all the addresses towards the end and everything else. But
thanks.
What I find interesting about the renderings that you do is you always write out a kind of a summation of where the idea came from, which a lot of people will just post imagery. You post out the design philosophy and the design process of how you took it.
It's kind of like what went to get to that point, I guess, or like an explanation of the design itself, or just why I did it that way. Because what you see on my Instagram, it's more of a showcase of what's possible. Because at one point when I was starting this, I remember I got a guy who sent me a message because he wanted me to help him get with the rendering of his car. And that was like the first job, quote unquote, I did. So I realized, man, I could do this like a job and it would be pretty cool. So I started, doing more and more and getting more into it. And it turned into this hobby / work that I still do, which I'm really like super thankful because it's such an awesome thing. It's my daily job now.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and I remember this car that I did, which kind of was another pivotal point, which is I don't know if you remember, a Buick GNX with a GTR engine.
Absolutely. Yep.
So that was kind of my first viral-ish car. Everybody shared it in like 1320 video, and it was just shared all around. And I remember I started getting messages. They were basically just like, hey, I saw your Buick rendering on this Facebook group, like, I don't know, G-Body Owners Club of America Club.
Sure. And
it was just like message after message after message, just like that. And they were just like, can I get a rendering of my car? And it could be a Monte Carlo or a Cutlass or something like that. And I remember that week, I think I did like 6 or 7 renderings of G-Bodies for like,
wow.
And I thought to myself, if I can do this with like every car, I'm gonna have a job for a while. So what you see on my Instagram is basically showcasing just ideas, which of course, because it's a rendering, it's not limited by money, it's not limited by what could be possible. If the car's rare, it doesn't matter. So it's just showcasing what could be done. And then people message me or something and they say, hey, I'm working on this. Can we do this little rendering of my project?
Well, what I think is amazing though, how much research do you do? Because like I said, you put a nice summation up of everything that you do. And I'm gonna jump to another quick one and we're gonna put this back. We'll put this up so people can see it. Yeah. But you did an amazing rendering of 80 Chrysler, like late 80s, early 90s Chrysler cars, the Imperial and the Daytona.
Yeah.
And in your kind of caption on the side, you went through this whole thing about when Chrysler owned Lamborghini and they got together. How much research do you do on this? Like, because you always put these great explanations of, well, listen, it didn't happen, but it obviously could have. What if it did?
Yeah. So like, for example, the Chrysler Newport you mentioned, that was more of a, let's just see, I wanted to experiment with like the stock car looks with the big tires and so it was it was very simple thinking behind it. But that specific example of the Chryslers or just the whole what ifs, that idea came from an article, I think it was by Motor Trend or Car and Driver, I don't remember, of that, I guess, episode. I think Bob Lutz said it on an interview about when Lee Iacocca wanted to do the Chrysler by Lamborghini editions with the Imperial. I thought it would be pretty cool to see how they would have looked, because Mr. Lutz was actually very specific on what they did. He explained what they did and the colors they painted them and the wheels and all that, but no images existed, of course.
Right.
So I did the Imperial, and midway through doing the Imperial, I thought, well, what if they also did something actually cool like Daytona? So I looked what Chrysler was doing. And I thought, oh, maybe an L-body Charger, but that was too old by then. I think it was the next one. So I thought that the next one was the Daytona, the front-wheel drive Daytona from that time. So that got like a Countach flares and wheels, and it actually fit. They fit pretty well.
I think they look amazing, but even more so than that, you've gone so far, and again, everybody that's listening, you have to go to Instagram, Facebook. You have to look up Abimelec's pages because you need to look at this from a visual perspective. The ad that you posted up is period. It's got its summation. You even have the Chrysler 770 warranty in there from back in the day.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite part because it does take a bit of research and going through like all the ads from all the models from that year. I try to make it yearly. Sometimes, ads are just like, if I'm making X period car for what, sometimes it's just so old that you wouldn't find a lot of stuff, but I try to keep it as period as possible. So for that Chrysler ad, I went through a lot of ads from eBay, from Google Images, and just seeing what the elements were as far as graphic design goes, and images themselves, like the Chrysler logo, which I think was like in this chrome texture, or like the 7070 warranty, which was in all ads at that time, because that's what makes it feel authentic. Because people who looked at those ads when they were out, they remember the 770 warranty, and they remember the type of font they used and the color palette and all that.
Yeah, and that's me, right? As somebody who was there in the 80s and grew up with these cars. And it's just funny because, like, listen, the Chrysler or the Chrysler Daytonas of the 80s, they're pretty crappy. Like they're pretty bad. Having driven a number of them back in the day, they're pretty terrible. I mean, it was basically an elongated K car platform that Chrysler adapted. It wasn't very good. But then I look at this and I go, oh my God. It would have been amazing. Like I would have done so many bad things to get these vehicles.
Yeah, I imagine in the 80s something looking like that. Yeah.
It would have been amazing. But here's another one I want to pull up. Now, this one you had done, and it's what your version of a Hellcat would have been on a 1969 Dodge Charger.
Oh, yeah. That actually was my second what if. Like the second I did.
Yep. What's interesting about this, and for those out there, again, 1969 Dodge Charger, right? One of the most iconic muscle cars ever designed. Yeah. My favorite shot of this car, and you'll have to go because he puts multiple angles and things of these vehicles up, is the underhood shot where you have a period correct Chrysler Hemi.
Yeah.
426 heavy with a cross ram with two period correct Paxton superchargers under there. So you have taken like, okay, well, if they had the technology, what technology would they have used that was available to them in 69? And I look at this.
Paxtons,
and it's just, it's amazing to me. And I'm always wondering, you design these cars, you put them up as the what ifs.
Yeah.
How many people reach out to you and go, I'm going to build this, or I want to duplicate this?
I've seen a lot of comments like, first of all, saying that makes so much sense. It's totally buildable. I want to do it. I haven't seen anybody take on some because some of these are actually kind of like rare parts or rare cars.
Sure,
it would be kind of hard to do it. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people like really committed to some of the ideas. The Charger itself, that was actually a lot of fun to make, and there was a lot of thinking to it because it was, as I said, it was the second one I did. The first one was the Trackhawk Cherokee. It was based on an XJ, because I was just thinking one day, what if the Trackhawk, the new one, just came out, the Hellcat one? So I was thinking, what if that thing was made in the 80s? So I did the rendering, and it was just going to be a one-time thing for me.
Yeah.
But it was just so people liked it so much, and it had such an engagement on the pages and both Facebook and Instagram. So I just had to keep it going because it was such a likable idea for the people. So I thought, well, what can I do now? And I thought of a what if 69? What if Chrysler did a Hellcat in 69? Obviously, they didn't At first I wanted to use like a 671
Mm-hmm.
supercharger, but I did some research, and back then nobody was using it for OEMs. And then I
Right.
stumbled across the Super Snake Cobra that
Sure.
the Carroll Shelby did, with the twin Paxtons.
Yep.
I did. That's it. They would have used that because somebody
Right.
else was doing it. So actually, for the underhood shot that you mentioned, I rendered in 3D the
Uh-huh.
engine, and at that time I didn't know a lot of things that I do now, so it was kind of tricky to get. So I did just the block with the heads, and then in
Okay.
Photoshop I rendered it in the same angle as a photo of a cobra that I
Huh.
got. So I just on Photoshop I photoshopped in the Paxtons right of the cobra, so it kind of
Uh-huh.
looks real. So it worked out pretty well in the end.
It worked out amazing. And
Thanks.
what I always find astonishing is that, the renderings are getting better and better.
Yeah.
And these are not simple models to do. I mean, when you look under the hood, you've got headlight harnesses and wiring harnesses and
Yeah, it's
and all that stuff. They're very complex rendering. Everything from the bumperettes that hold the hood in place, right, when it's closed.
yeah.
Um, these are not easy things to do. And yet you seem to be able to bang these things out with your eyes closed, where, you know, it, I have no idea what the time is on this. So when you get a concept, okay, and we'll stay on the charger since we're there. From start to finish, how long does that take you to execute it?
So it really, really depends on what's being done to the car.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the model itself, like the I guess you could call it the stock model, like right off the factory, how it came out of the
Mm-hmm.
factory. I could spend some time modeling it, but it's just such a time consuming task to do car models to the level of detail as you mentioned.
Yeah.
There's a huge marketplace for the base models, and that's when you see like some architect displaying like a building and you see the little cars, that's where they get them.
Yeah.
So you can actually get a lot of cars and a lot of models, and if it's something like a 69 Charger, there's
Yeah.
plenty of options, and they're very highly detailed. So I could spend like I don't know, we're talking 2 months modeling
Yeah.
a car,
Okay.
or I could get something a model that's already made. So
Okay.
I usually go down that route. It's a win-win because I save time and I'm
Sure.
able to keep it, keep it constant on the page. And the artist who makes that model is also gets benefited because I buy the model from them.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have the model, I can start, modifying it and all the ways that I want to modify it. If it's for a client, if it's for like a crazy idea of mine, I can start
Sure.
chopping and lowering and, the whole suspension and wheels and all that. By
Yep.
now, I have my own library of stuff that I model, brake parts, wheels, all that. So now if it's like something kind of common, I can get done pretty quickly because chances are I already have the wheels, I already have the tires. If
Right.
somebody
Sure.
comes like a client, and I think the car that I've done the most is a 69 Camaro.
Right.
If somebody comes, hey, I have a 69 Camaro that I'm building. I want this color, this wheels, this tires. I want to lower it this much. I want this X and Y. And I can get it done pretty quickly because I already have the model. I already have the parts. I can put
Yeah.
it together and then render it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but what about, and I'm going to reference another one here that a good friend of mine and somebody that you know as well, our good friend Ron Baugh came up
Oh,
with.
yeah, Ron. Yeah.
And this was one that was shared all over the internet
Oh,
that
yeah.
got just astounding. You got an astounding response to
Yeah.
it. You took a Fox Body Mustang, which Ron is a disciple of the Fox Body,
Yeah.
and Ron's for everybody out there at 777 Styles 777 STYLE is Ron's page. You should go check it out. And you did a what if with an F40 with a
Yeah.
Ferrari
Mixed them
F40,
both.
and it
Oh, yeah.
works.
It kind of
It
works.
works.
Yeah. He sent me a message one day and he was like, hey, dude, I have this crazy idea and I want you to make it. I want to mash up an F40 and a Fox Body. And that was kind of the brief. So they are, even though people won't say it out loud, they're very similar looking. Like if you see a profile shot of a Fox body and F40, besides the proportions of obviously front engine compared to mid-engine,
Yeah.
the lines and all that, it's just 80s stuff, right? So it was kind of, I want to say easy to mix them up.
Huh.
I started with the Fox body model, and that took a
Okay.
while because there was a lot of modeling involved regarding the flares and all that to make it look like an F40. So that was a little bit of a tricky one. But in the end, I think it worked out. Yeah. I'm glad so many people liked it.
It worked. It not only worked out, but again, this is the type of thing where in the real world, you know, if you had ever told somebody, like I grew up in the 80s, right? So my parking lot, my first car was a Fox body. First car I ever had was an 81 Fox body, which I promptly totaled. But if you were to ever tell anybody back then, and you were to say, listen, we're gonna take a Fox body Mustang and we're gonna morph it together with a Ferrari F40, on both sides of the coin, people would have been outraged, right? Because back then the technology was simply not available to do that from an artistic point of view. Yes, you could have drawings done and things like that. Excuse me. But now you've managed to put these things together in a way where not only can people visually see it and see things like shadows and flares and scoops and wheels, but it looks possible. There is no reason that if somebody really wanted to go buck wild and had an unlimited budget, that they couldn't build this thing.
Yeah, it's actually kind of buildable. A lot of people shared to me some like very obscure photos of Fox bodies, racing Fox bodies that kind of looked similar to what we did.
Yeah.
So I guess it was a natural design flow.
Okay. So when did you talked a little bit about people started calling you and asking for renderings and things like that. At what point? Well, let me ask you, what were you doing before this? And when did you say, oh, wait a minute, I could move forward with this as a career? What was that? Do you remember the moment that happened for you?
Honestly, I think that this could be a career moment was, I don't know if I've had it. I don't know how long could I extend this, but I'm way past my expectations now, honestly. But I was I was finishing high school when I started working on this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
What? No, keep going. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, it was finishing high school, and I started doing more works and more works about with people wanting their car rendered, and at that time I was I see the quality of some of the renderings then, and I'm like, oh, now they're way better.
Okay.
But yeah, I was really surprised at the rate that it just escalated. Things escalated because I really didn't consider that I could do this as a career, like a full-time job like now. But I like it, and if it works, I'll keep it going.
Are you getting contacted now by not only, I guess, just regular car people, but custom shops and OEMs and things like that? Has that started to happen?
Yeah, like recently, I can say like from last year to now, there has been a turn in the type of work that I do now, leaning towards more that kind of work, like more official, I guess you could call it, for shops and stuff like that, media outlets, a lot of those. So I still do cars for like regular people, like, hey, I want my this model, and I want to do this, I want to buy these wheels and all that.
Well, I mean, you've done a couple of renderings for us here at Hemmings. You did our 76 Blazer project. You did the Daytona for us, and again, they're just fantastic.
Thanks.
Let me ask you, do you also look at different components of cars? So have you ever gotten a request to do like a seat, or, hey, we want to design this wheel or a brake caliper or things like that? Has anybody been that specific yet?
They have, but it's always like the full concept of the whole car. And if they want a little bit more, like I guess you could call it I don't know how you could say it. If they want to showcase something more than the other things,
Yeah.
they would say like, hey, I want to get a rendering specific of like how the steering wheel looks. I'm
Okay.
working right now with some guys. They're making a BMW 2002 resto mods, like the old
Sure.
70s 2002, and they're very specific about the way the dash is going to look and the steering wheel color. So I have to be more. I have to focus on that more.
Okay. Okay. Looking at some of the renderings, right? We talked about the Newport, we talked about the Chryslers, the Fox body,
Yeah.
but you also really go into a couple of different ways. You do things that I think people don't expect as well. One of my favorites that you've done is you did a 1977 Aston Martin Vantage, but
Oh
with
yeah.
like a cyberpunk theme.
Yeah, that.
And it's just, I look at that, and for those out there, again, go to the page, look it up. You've got, NASCAR style wheels in the back, turbine wheels in the front, right? It looks like it fits the environment. And that's the other thing. You put the environment into the rendering.
Yeah.
You have these neon lights and this background and everything else. So how does something like that come about? Is that just right out of your imagination? You're like, hell, if the world went to shit and I had to do this, and what would I want to drive? I want to drive an Aston Martin. It looks like that. Like, how does that thought process happen?
That's one of my favorite things to do. Like just creating some things right at the bat. Like I've tried to like, hey, this is what's coming next week, but I just don't like it. I like to be surprised, right? So works like that, specific Aston Martin, they just come like today I feel like doing this. And the inspiration, I've always said, that comes in many ways. So I could be watching a movie, I could be playing a video game, I could be out on the street and I see I don't know, a Geo Metro go by and say, oh, what if that Geo Metro had big wheels? Some stuff like that, right?
Right.
So I think that Aston Martin, if I recall correctly, I watched, I think it was Blade Runner movie.
Okay.
And then the video game Cyberpunk came out. So I was like in this mood and I really liked the art part of that game. So
Yep.
I was just very inspired by that genre, I guess you could call it.
So how much of that inspiration, right? Like, so you're talking about video games and you're talking about movies like Blade Runner and such, which are just iconic, right?
Yeah, exactly.
From the visuals that they put into it. Do you ever find that you're lacking for ideas? Like or do you ever start a model and you're like, it's not going the way I want. I'm going to get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I have. Yeah. I've experienced some mental block. Actually, recently on November, I think last November, I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. And I took a little vacation. I took a little break. I went to Phoenix with some family and we went to look at cars and we went to a car show and all that. And I came back fresh and I was just ready to go for it. Fortunately, I do get a lot of inspiration from what I see on social media and the kind of events that are going now. And, brands recently have just been pushing each other. Like Chrysler releases the Elephant and then Chevy comes up with the 632. And then
Right.
it's just all this media bombing towards us that I really don't see myself lacking a lot of ideas, but sometimes,
Right.
yeah, I do get mental block and I just need to take a break.
Okay. You do concentrate your automotive palette runs the gamut, right?
Yeah,
You do everything from cars from the 30s. You do, gasser mashups and things like that. All those cars from say the 1930s up until now are very highly stylized, right? The designers back then, when they built these cars, they were using wooden bucks, banging these things out by hand,
Yeah.
and even through the the 1960s, these cars were still pretty archaic, right?
Yeah.
But the designs themselves were, in my opinion, some of the greatest designs ever to come out. They're just stunning in every way.
I agree. Yeah, totally.
What do you think of automotive design now? When you look at a vehicle and knowing that, we have carbon cafe regulations that kind of hamper designers, because I know a lot of OEM designers and I've seen the sketches that they do that they would in their mind would want to do. What do you think of automotive design now?
It's that's a really good question. I do like cars, some cars now, but I definitely agree with you that the older you go, kind of the better they get, because of that very reason, which is regulations and safety boundaries and all that. I've seen, like, I know designers are still the same. If you see a video of a designer, explaining their concept car, they're super excited about it, and they explain you the way, why they did this and why they did that.
Yeah.
So I know that hasn't gone away, but they're now very limited. So I was just yesterday, I was watching a review of the new Mercedes EQS, the new electric S-Class, which I'm not a fan of how it looks. If you see the concept car, it's amazing. It looks fantastic. The proportions are really well. So you can see that they're the same design, but not the same. Yeah. The actual production car looks very toned down. So I guess it's just a matter of the regulation thing and the bean counters stuck in their
right.
Which is kind of sad, but I guess there's not a lot we could do, right?
No, I mean, that's
driving old cars.
Well, that's the thing, right? I know for me, I mean, I'm fortunate to have a bunch of stuff in the garage, and my newest car is 20 years old.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where you get to a period of automotive design and functionality where, like, I am not a fan of screens in cars. I just don't like it. I don't like, if I get in a new car, like the new Mercedes, and the entire dashboard is a screen, I want nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Because a car, in my opinion, still, you're supposed to drive it. It's not supposed to be driven. And it is an interactive experience between the pilot, who is the person behind the wheel, and the machine. Yeah. And now the whole mechanical aspect of an automobile is kind of going out the window. I have no problem with EVs and things like that. In fact, you did a beautiful kind of a beautiful EV conversion on a 66 Oldsmobile.
Oh yeah, that was right after SEMA. Everybody was doing EV, so I thought I might just jump in the train. That's when the marketing classes come in handy, because you know that the topic is hot, so you jump right in it, and it gets a little boost. So I was listening to your recent podcast with Matt Farah from the Smoking Tire.
Sure. Yeah.
And I have to say, I really agree with the point you made about EV conversions. It makes total sense on like a 59 Cadillac,
right?
Which at that point, it was the engine was just irrelevant. It was just supposed to be quiet and smooth.
Right.
That's exactly. So by EV swapping it, you make it better at what the original engineers wanted it to be. So I guess I'm not. A lot of people think that we car guys are in a battle to death with modern stuff, which is not the case. I mean, it can be, it can work, but the way they're doing it now, I don't like it. I'm not really a fan of most of the stuff out.
Yeah, it's difficult. It is a difficult time to be. I mean, from the design perspective, listen, you still have the exotics, and they're fantastic, right? And that's the genre of automobile where the design can still just go run amok for the most part, right? Because they don't have to adhere to everything. But from a consumer product vehicle, right? When you talk about SUVs and you talk about sedans and everything, the fact of the matter is you could scrape off the manufacturer, monikers and logos off every single one of them. They kind of all look the same. All right. You put a Mazda SUV next to a Ford SUV next to if you took, I'm going to get shit for this, but like, take the Lamborghini Urus, scrape those Lambo badges off us and put a Hyundai badge on it. And you know what? People, I mean, there are people out there who go, oh, well, Hyundai makes some good stuff. Oh, that's pretty cool. Right. Meanwhile, the Lamborghini designers' heads would explode all over the wall.
Yeah, but it would be angry.
But it just goes back to where I think the stuff that really influences us. Now, do you have a favorite genre, a favorite time period of vehicle, or like when there are so many, like, do you take things from import design and from European design and from American design? Like what's your go-to in your head that,
So as far as design goes, 50s and 60s. because I
Really?
think all over the world, I think they were kind of like a peak, especially at the 60s, because if you look at European cars, Aston Martin DB5, Ferrari 250s, all the 250s, they look amazing. If you look America, all the muscle cars, even like the trucks and all that, they look great.
Yeah.
If you go to Japan, kind of less, but still, Toyota 2000 GT, the
Sure.
Datsun, the Fairlady, the C, the 240Z, it was just like a great time. Even up until like the 70s, they were doing not so great engines, but great design. 50s European cars, I think they were not as good looking as most of the stuff over here. Like Cadillacs in the 50s, they're just the best.
Just amazing.
Yeah. I have as far as design, because I have a 58 Cadillac and to drive.
Do you?
It's a hearse. It's a 58 hearse.
Do you really?
Yeah, that's my project.
Okay.
And my daily driver is a 94 Grand Marquis.
That's fantastic. You have a 94 Grand Marquis. That car, as I'm sure you're aware, is unkillable.
Yeah, it's got like 200,000 miles and it just doesn't care. I drove it to Phoenix, like 600 miles back and forth, and it was just like, okay.
Well, where are you located?
In Hermosillo, it's called, this little town south of Arizona in Mexico.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have, down in Mexico, do you have a lot of, is there a big car culture?
I'm sorry. So yeah, I think as far as like custom cars and all that, it's kind of still evolving. It's not like you would see in the US, but it's pretty good. I really like the new cars. Sorry, I really like the new cars because the market is very similar to the US. The way you can get a Raptor, you can get pretty much all the full-size SUVs and trucks and all that. But there's also a lot of developing country stuff, which is the Chinese brands and a lot of Japanese stuff that doesn't make it over to the US. So you could be sitting at a red light and there's a Raptor next to you, and then right next to it is a little tiny Chinese hatchback. So I think that's an interesting contrast.
Huh. Okay. So let me ask you, where are you looking to go? Meaning from a career standpoint now, right? Your artistic acumen is just fantastic. The ideas that you come up with are well, I mean, well, it's true. There are some people that try to do this and listen, they know they're terrible or they know they're not very good at it. Like if I tried to do this, I could do this for my whole life. I would never come up with any of the 100th of the ideas that you come up with. It's just not the way that I'm wired. And I think the other thing is like well, and I say this a lot, like I don't think in 3 dimensions. So when I see an image like that, to be able to turn it and move it and visualize it and see how that part or that component of a vehicle is going to affect the overall design. For me, it's just difficult to visualize, which is why I'm always so enamored with artists, because to conceptualize and then put it together in a visual property that looks authentic and real is as far as I'm concerned, an astonishing talent. But do you want to go into pure automotive design? Is that a part of is that a career that you would want to follow and possibly work for an OEM or work for a custom shop? Or do you have more fun doing this? Does this type of, mashups and creativity just constantly stimulate you?
Yeah. So I've recently thought about this because, as I said, up until not a long time ago, I couldn't see myself extending this a long time. But now I'm way above my expectations. So I've thought about doing work for OEMs and all that, but I think I do get more enjoyment out of just doing my stuff, my crazy mashups and all that. When I started doing this, I was envisioning like a final goal to move it to real stuff, like doing actual cars. So that's why I was pretty happy to move forwards from Photoshop to 3D, so then I could do real stuff. And the Cadillac, the 58, is kind of the start of that. So I want to see maybe that's where it ends up, but I'm not set on anything. I just like to, I want to work and see where it leads. Yeah.
That's
because
that
I
is-
really enjoy cars to the point that if it's doing this, if it's doing some other thing, as long as it's with cars, I think I'll be pretty happy.
That's outstanding. Well, like I said, your work is just fantastic.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
It's one of the places I think so many of us enthusiasts go to stimulate ourselves, like, because we all get into a funk every now and then. A lot of times it's with our own stuff, whether we're in a build or we're trying to modify or stuff like that. And the fact that your artwork gives us so many different thoughts and has the capacity to make us change direction as enthusiasts or kind of stimulate a new direction, whatever the case is fantastic. So where can everyone find you? Give us your Facebook address, give us your Instagram, give us everything.
Yeah, so I'm always like Abimelec Design is my Instagram and my Facebook. That's where you can find me easily.
Spell that out because a lot of people will listen to this.
Abimelec. Yeah, that's my name, Abimelec Design, and that's like my email is right on the Instagram page, and that's I always try to keep up with the messages and all that. So,
okay, well, I will tell you from personal experience working together that your work is outstanding. Look forward to it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Mike.
As does everybody on Instagram that follows you.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that your career is just going to continue to get bigger and bigger. Be careful what you wish for, because there's a lot of people out there that are doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people doing it to the level that you're doing it. So
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Obviously, please keep up a good work, dude. Next time you get down into Los Angeles, SEMA, beers are on me. No question.
Yeah, there's a couple plans for SEMA this year. I hope they realize. So yeah, I'll be sticking around.
All right, very, very good. Well, sir, thank you so much for coming on the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast.
Thanks to you.
Obviously, we're going to continue to follow everybody. Go to Abimelec's page, check out his renderings. If you want a rendering, Duds, shoot him an email. Right? If you're an OEM and you want something done, shoot him an email. It's not rocket science. We just told you how to contact the man. So
thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, dude. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Go look at this stuff. We will talk to you all soon. Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.